This video, I'm going to be sharing with you exactly how to manifest in a simulated reality, understanding that it is a possibility that we live in a simulated reality. I'm going to show you what that means with the law of attraction and how you can navigate through it. Welcome back to another video. My name's Aaron and I help people expand their consciousness. Now in this video, I'm going to be sharing with you more on this idea of understanding a simulated reality. This is something that I have shared in some prior videos. People seem to love it, and it's something that I personally have been thinking about quite a bit recently. Now, first off, if this seems like something that's a little bit scary, just understand it's not meant to be. It doesn't mean that we necessarily live in that of a computer. A computer is an analogy that we use. When we understand a computer, it makes it easier to understand the potential for how reality may work, but it doesn't mean it's all technology. It does, however, mean that we are more than our physical bodies. It would mean that it's a possibility that we are projecting ourselves in this reality, and that at a deeper level we are so much more than we can possibly imagine. Now, this is something that Elon Musk actually recently said. He said that the chances that it is that we live in the baseline reality, which means the true reality, the true real reality, he says is less than a fraction of a percentage, which then he implies that we do live in a simulation. Now think about this. We have VR technology that you can already put on, that you could look around and actually think that you're there. Like your brain does not know the difference between you being real here and then what you're actually seeing. So knowing that, who's to say and what's to say that it's not like we came into this reality projecting ourselves from a higher level of consciousness to have this certain life experience, because there's a lot of learning that can be done here. I imagine that in higher realms of consciousness, we have more abilities to do things than we could possibly even imagine. Imagine that in higher realms of consciousness, that things happen instantaneously. Imagine you think of something, it manifests instantly. Imagine that's the speed at which we work at a higher level of consciousness. However, the thing with that is we create things so quickly, and there's not as much learning that comes along if you were to slow things down, which is why we may have this kind of experience, because things move a little bit slower. You can think about something, it's not instantly there. You can think about it and you can add emotion into it. You can go through a little bit of challenges to get there, and it calls for a great learning lesson, and we have a whole bunch of people that we can relate to that makes this a much more interesting place. Even though sometimes there may be pain involved, the idea is that we come here for life experience. And I think one of the purposes of the simulation we live in, there's certain purposes of it. And I think one of them could possibly be to awaken to the understanding that we are in a simulation. To remember that we are immortal spiritual beings that live in very temporary human experiences. And when you become aware of that, you then gain a higher ability to understand the game and more ability to flexibly shift through the game. Like imagine you're playing a video game and you at a certain point think that you are the avatar, that you are the character you're playing, when in actuality you're so much more than that. That's how we're living in our life. We grow up believing that we are these avatars, we are these egos. This is who I am. Then we go out into the world and we experience things and we say, this is who I am, this is how I relate to other people. Everything feels so real. But you see, the thing is it had to appear to be real in order for us to take it seriously. If we were born and we just remembered that this isn't that this is a form of game, then maybe we wouldn't take it so serious. And maybe we are born with that understanding, but then we're conditioned and we forget who we are. And then the purpose is to unwind ourselves from all the complex ideas we've got about ourselves, all the beliefs, and then to have and become more awakened to what that is. Now, when it comes to manifestation through that of the simulation, understand there's a couple key ideas I want to share. One of them, everything works on probabilities. Probabilities is the way we think of it. So the law of attraction kind of is, there's different probabilities of certain things happening. There may be a certain probability, will we experience X or Z? X or Y? Which one will we, A, B, or C? Which one will we experience? Well, it depends upon our energy state and our vibration. Because everything in this reality has vibration, and we could think of it as resonance, just like we have the law of gravity, or we may have certain things that keep us in the kind of experiences we're having. Just like we're creating our own reality, just like we're having and experiencing that, we are collectively doing the same thing. We are collectively together creating a reality in a certain direction. Now, the key to this is being aware of how this works in certain forms. Now, first off, we have something that is called rule sets. Now, a rule set is that of something that we all agreed to prior to the kind of experience we're having. A rule set could have been gravity. It could have been that of weather and having certain kind of experiences with different, maybe the law of cause and effect, for example. Maybe the law of polarity or duality. These are certain things that we may have agreed to before we came in because it's part of the game of life, the simulation of life that we're all playing. Now, what this means is that part of that was the law of attraction. That whatever we think about, whatever is like itself is drawn. Meaning we always bring more of what is alike. So it's like attracts like. And we can see then that also, since we are so much more than we can priorly imagine, really anything is possible. It's never a question, is it possible? The question is it probable? Remember, we're dealing with probabilities here. So when you become more aware of what is probable, you're then putting your energy in a certain direction, and then you can choose that which you want to experience. Now, here's a cool idea of something I've shared a couple times before. Understanding resonance, understanding that this is so much more flexible than we priorly thought, we can start to view the manifestation process as a lot easier than we were thinking about it before. Because in the prior analogy, we think of it like, oh, I'm here, I want to track that over there. So I got to think about it, I got to do all of these things, and I got to go from here to over here to over here to eventually over here. But what we want to experience exists right now because there's an infinite number of possibilities that exist. And in the same way that I've talked about parallel realities before, we can see that every possible reality exists right now in the present moment. So we can begin to know this can be so much easier than we are priorly making it. We can make and allow this to be a process that we just resonate with what we want to experience, knowing that in this life experience, whatever we resonate with is what we experience. We don't get in life that which we want, but we always get a reflection of who we are being. So this is about having that kind of awareness and then choosing that which we want to experience. Now, here's something that I found very powerful about understanding the potential of the simulated type reality theory. And that is that just like we are creating our own reality, we're also collectively doing it together. There is a certain desire of not only ourselves, but there is also a desire of the system itself. Now, have you ever heard the quote that the more you put out, the more you get back? Or have you ever heard that the more value you add to other people, the more comes back to you? Now, why could this be? I believe the reason this is because we're all connected. When you make it a win-win for not just yourself, but you make it a win-win for other people, you tap into the desire of the whole collective consciousness. Because we're all connected, we're all one. So when we do that, we tap into a more powerful stream of energy. Now, this is why I personally have such a desire to add value to other people in my life. I found and put my whole basis of my business, of what I do, on YouTube and everything around adding value to other people, because I really believe that the more value we add to other people, the more that comes back to us, because at the deepest fundamental level, we're all connected. So what is good for someone else is good for me because that someone else is connected to me. So not only that though, it's almost like the universe, the simulation, whatever you want to call it, it wants to work through me because I have this genuine intention to help other people. That's how I view it. So it's almost like instead of me, my ego, having to do everything, thinking the avatar has to do everything, we can just chill out a bit and let things happen. Let the game actually run itself. Understand that it's flowing through us. Just like we think we are the little character in the game, we are also at a greater level of consciousness, the game itself. Just like we may have heard, or at least I've heard this, I've read this in many books before, a lot of times we think we are this individual ego structure, but in the reality within which we live, we are also the dimension itself. So if we're talking about dimensions, We could say that we are the whole dimension itself. We just dream that this is my individual point of consciousness. This is me as Aaron. This is what I do. I make YouTube videos. So you see, this is about having the awareness that we are so much more than we can imagine. And that when we see it from this point of view, the question is not, is something possible? Is it probable? Because the moment we become more aware of this correlation, but that we are not only the ego, the more we then expand our abilities outside of just our little ego, thinking it has to do everything. And then what we do is we can begin to see the correlation between what we think and what we experience. And in that, we can begin to be in a very powerful way. Now, have you ever heard of something called beginner's luck? Or when you do something new, it's like things happen very easily. Now the reason this is because the way the simulation works is anytime we get used to a certain pattern, that pattern starts to then use us. So you may go to work and you may fall into a certain pattern where you get kind of sad that you're there and you start to like vent with other employees and stuff. Because you're always going there, you pattern yourself into always doing and always feeling the same way and always having the same kind of experience. But what eventually happens is if you do something new, there's more potential for good things to happen or for something else to happen because you're not so patterned by the neuro associations and the way that you're thinking. So it's about being aware of that and choosing to do new things. When you do new things, you take yourself out of the autopilot mind and you start to create a powerful change and potentiality in what you can experience. So the key to manifesting in the possibility that we live in a simulated reality is understanding that first what we must do is become aware that we're not just our ego. This is what a lot of people call spiritual awakening. You become aware that we are more than we priorly thought that we were. We're more than just this physical. Our energy body, first off, our energy goes far outside of just our body, so we are not our body. And when we begin to see this, we can see that we are so much more. We may be dreaming that we're here. Maybe part of the simulation is a dream that we're having. We're dreaming that we're here right now. We're asleep at a higher level of consciousness. And when we wake up, when we die in this life, we wake up at a higher level of consciousness. That's what I believe happens. We come up with all these different interpretations, right? We go through, you see thousands and thousands of people have been through NDEs, near-death experiences, and many have very similar type understanding or similar type experiences. They went through a white tunnel. Then they saw their spirit guides. Their spirit guides told them, well, you still have to live here a little bit longer. They felt unconditional love and bliss. They didn't want to come back. They came back. Their lives were completely changed. It happens. A lot of NDEs that you see will have a very similar story to that. Now, what if the white tunnel we see is just a symbol of the mind, because that's what we think. I mean, everything in our life pretty much is a form of symbol. Think about it, all the stories we hear, a lot of symbols, figurative type speech. But the symbol, we are transitioning from one state of consciousness to another state of consciousness. The tunnel represents the traveling because we have a belief system that says that we must travel from point A to point B, even though at higher levels of consciousness, I think that we can just instantly appear places because we're not bound by our physical bodies. So we can then see that a lot of things in our life may be symbols. But nonetheless, the reason I'm saying all this is because I believe we are so much more than we could priorly imagine. That when we begin to tap into this energy, everything in our life will begin to change. That then we can start to see things as probabilities. How can I focus in a certain direction? Focus and intention are the powerful instruments that allow us to go into the direction we want, to experience more and more. But remember, at the same time, when you begin to step outside of that what is comfortable, outside of the old autopilot mind and how it always tends to run itself out, when you step outside of all of that, you start to create from a completely new place. You start to create from a more authentic place as well. Because a lot of times we think we may be the autopilot mind, but that's just a habitualized set of patterns. And the more we become aware of it, the more we can change it, and the more we can then be how we prefer to be. So this whole process is something all of us can tap into. I think it's a very empowering idea, knowing that we are so much more than we could priorly imagine, knowing that we may just be having a dream right now. This may be a game that we're playing, and that we can start to have more fun. It's just a very consistent game, a very consistent dream that we're having. Whereas when we dream at night, a whole bunch of different dreams, more fragments. But nonetheless, this is a long, consistent dream. We have our senses, which are interpretations of vibration. However, this is just a part of the experience. We are so much more. I think part of the purpose of the game is to learn unconditional love, to transcend consciousness, to transcend lower levels of consciousness, and to become more of who we really are, which is this higher level of consciousness state of being. And the more we do that, the more we merge with who we really are. So something I did do is I created a vibrational meditation that will help you to raise your vibration so that you are more able to glide through this simulation that we may be living in. It's absolutely free. I recommend you listen to it for 21 days. I think it can absolutely change your life. It's going to be in the top of the description box below. Like I said, 21 days, I think you'll feel completely different. I also am going to be doing more live Q&As on Instagram. So if you haven't followed me there yet, feel free, because I do daily content over there. Plus, I do more live interactive Q&As. And we can go ahead and interact there. And as always, I hope you enjoyed this video. Feel free to like this video if you liked it. Subscribe if you haven't already. Hit the little notification gear so that you can see the daily vids that I do. That's the way YouTube does things now. You actually have to hit that button to see the daily vids. I have a lot more coming. And other than that, as always, peace, much love, and namaste.